So, welcome to to everybody to this. This is our third SIETAR UK online event. My name's Adrian Pilbeam. I'm the president of SIETAR UK, and welcome to this to Reconciling Intercultural Dilemmas. The origins behind this was that I asked Alex Morgan to do the session, thinking it would be for 30 or 40 people at a venue in London. And of course, things have changed, and now we have it online. And we've been very lucky that Fons Trompenaars has agreed to participate as well. In fact, he'll be the main speaker. But before going into the main business, I'd just like to say a few words about SIETAR UK. Many people will know, of course. So I'm sure a lot of people are members of SIETAR, either SIETAR UK or SIETAR somewhere else. And as you know, the purpose is to foster the exchange of ideas between trainers, consultants, researchers, and everyone working in the intercultural field. And perhaps like all national SIETARs, we have monthly, or we aim to run monthly professional development events. This obviously is one. And 2 social events. It'll be a challenge for us in July, how we do that one. We have a mentoring program called Boost for people early in their careers to have a mentor that they can work with. And of course, we're part of the SIETAR Europa group, which many of you might be part of as well, with 9 national SIETARs dotted around Europe. And if you want more information about SIETAR UK, you've got the website down there. So if I just pass on to our 2 speakers today, I think Fons Trompenaars needs no introduction. He's the co-founder and director of Trompenaars Hampden Turner with Professor Hampden Turner, based in Amsterdam. And Alex has been working with Fons and with THT for 3 or 4 years now. I've known Alex for 7 or 8 years. We work quite close together. I'm based in Bath. She's based in Malmesbury in Wiltshire, and she's the director of Abbey Communication, a communication consultancy. And she's also just been appointed a senior lecturer at Leicester Castle Business School. So that's, and Alex will, in a few minutes, explain more about how Fons came to be here and what's going to be happening this evening. So, and just one last introduction to the members of the SIETAR UK team who've been involved in putting this together. Seiji Nakano, who's our digital director at SIETAR UK and is our Zoom wizard. Chris Massey, newly elected as our events director, who'll be assisting in the management of the breakout rooms and reading out the chat later on. And then myself, I'll be doing a little bit of the same. So I'll hand over to Alex now to tell you what's going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. Welcome, everybody. It's very exciting to do this event very differently to how I imagined, actually. So, as Adrian said, the original plan was to do a small workshop in London, and the topic of the workshop was going to be me sharing with you guys how I use the 7 dimensions and the THT dilemma reconciliation process in my training and coaching, because both models have made quite a significant difference to me and my clients in terms of how I help them navigate through intercultural problems and dilemmas. And so I was quite keen to share that with you guys because I find these models incredibly effective. But since then, 2 significant things have happened. One is that obviously we have gone online, and the bonus of going online is that we have been able to open the invitation to considerably more of you, and it's wonderful to see so many people have come online to join us this evening. And then the other significant thing that happened is that our date for this very nicely and coincidentally fell at the same time as Fons doing some significant research into COVID-19 related dilemmas, and you may have also heard that Fons is just in the process of publishing an ebook about COVID-19 dilemmas. So it seemed absolutely, you know, in the moment to actually hand this over to Fons, who very kindly offered to come and speak with you to share his COVID-19 dilemmas with you, and to open up a discussion with you guys about how you can take this thinking forward. There's some process things that I need to go through with you, so just bear with while I go through those with you. We do still want to run this evening as if it was a workshop, so there will be some breakout rooms, and Fons will give you very clear instructions as to what should happen in those breakout rooms. But when you do go into breakout rooms, please could you please put on your mics and your videos so you can speak with each other in the breakout rooms. When you're not in the breakout rooms, please could you kindly turn your mics off, because as you know, with a lot of you, it creates a lot of background noise and reverberation if all of the mics are on. So mics and videos on when you go into the breakout rooms, and when you come out of the breakout rooms, please turn them off. And when you come out of the breakout rooms, what we're going to do is ask one of you from each breakout room to put some notes in chat for to summarize the discussion that you've had in the breakout rooms, and then between us on the SIETAR team, we will facilitate that chat, and Fons will be able to respond to it. So when you are in the breakout rooms, if you wouldn't mind please deciding who's going to take that responsibility to come back out and to put the notes in chat. It will all become self-explanatory at the time, so don't worry too much about it. So those are just some housekeeping things. If you need anything else from us, you know, please put it in chat. I did see something pop up to say, is the session being recorded? And the answer to that is yes, it will be recorded, except for the parts of the session where you are in the breakout rooms. So those bits can't be recorded. So obviously we will edit it for you to have all of the other bits for you available on, I think, YouTube. Is that right, guys? We'll put it on YouTube.
SIETAR UK
Yes.
YouTube channel.
Okay, right. So our own YouTube channel. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's just I think enough about the process. So without further ado, I'm really delighted to say that, you know, I won't be doing the workshop, and in fact Fons will be doing the workshop. So Fons, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. Wonderful to be here, and wonderful to be with colleagues and to share some of the latest knowledge about what is happening to the world and how culture affects the way we approach it. Let me also tell you that the slides will be nicely distributed later on with the video, so there's enough for your memories, especially for the older ones. Now, what I would like to do is first of all make very sure that the context is right, and the context is about how does culture affect the way we react on the COVID-19 set of dilemmas. Why? Because we have seen that many countries have done the approach to the COVID-19 pandemic in quite different ways. If we see in Europe an extreme in the southern part, Italy, Spain and France, to have a complete lockdown with hardly any freedom, and an enormous amount of freedom in Sweden. We have seen the US and the UK taking the very brave but kind of stupid approach to COVID-19, namely the economy first, and then you have an enormous problem with health. I know societies that started with health and they have an enormous problem with the economy. In other words, the dilemmas are shared, but we have different approaches to them. And I would like to give you the latest results. We have developed an app to gather the results. By the way, we will give you access to the app. And for the Dutch participants, I add it's for free. It's for free for everybody, but especially the Dutch and the Scottish will be delighted. Now, what I would like to do is to make sure that there is a logic in how to frame the dilemmas, and that is done according to our 7 dimensions that apparently some of you know, and for those who don't, I'll give a very brief summary in the very beginning so you know what we're talking about, and we'll organize the 23 dilemmas, by the way, that we have seen. And I can't say that one dilemma is more important than the other. They're all important, but I would have never guessed that we would have 23 dilemmas. We measured the 7 major ones, and we have the first empirical data already by 1,200 people now. And it's quite sometimes surprising and sometimes not at all. So that is a bit my introduction in the logic behind the presentation. If you would like to think about what is this dilemma stuff, you know, most of us are already for years explaining that there are cultural differences. Now, to be honest, I knew that there were cultural differences. But what was disappointing in our field is that there are very few that go beyond adaptation to the differences. Now, I live in Amsterdam, and 53% of people living in Amsterdam don't have Dutch parents. So you have Swedes, British, Nigerians, Moroccans sitting in multicultural teams. And please explain me how you can best adapt to a multicultural team. It's impossible, because you cannot just swap from one culture to the other, apart from the fact there is a lack of knowledge, and you can only build it on stereotypes. So what is the alternative? And we need another logic. And there is, in our field, there are 2 big enemies. And one enemy is that most of our models are culturally biased. In other words, you can smell the nationality or the gender or the generation, because culture is obviously not only the wonderful world of nationality, it can be a mix of all of them, but you can smell where they're coming from. So let me give you an example. If you read the American literature on leadership, most probably you will get a revised edition, because the revised edition means they say the opposite of the previous edition. Let me give you an example. What was the most quoted competence of a leader in American literature 10 years ago? It was vision. What is it today? Execution. So that's the revised edition. 15 years ago, by the way, it was courage. What was it 5 years ago? Caution. So American literature on leadership oscillates from one extreme to the other. And as you can see recently, it's not working. Now, have you read the book Les Grands Patrons by Aucran? And it's a French author who looked at what are characteristics of a great leader in France. And it's based on 3 characteristics. 1, are you male? Oh, good. Are you born in Paris? Oh, good. And did you go to the École Polytechnique? Oh, good. That's leadership in France. Then you go to the Chinese leadership literature, and it's all yin, yang, mao, fao, tao. And we all know this, because if we read Chinese books on leadership, you get a complete different world than American or British or French. Now, what do you do in Amsterdam if you are a leader of a multicultural team? What leadership paradigm, which book, if you like, would you read? And I have good news for you. The book needs to be written. Now, we have done some tryouts, but it's not working. Even in Europe, you know, that continent of which the UK once was part, was kind of interesting because we lack the leadership capabilities to cope with this diversity, because the French think it should be top down, the Swedish thinks it should be bottom up, etc., etc. Now, that's one problem. By the way, I can say this about Myers-Briggs. I can say this about any model. You smell the nationality of the author. Now, what is the other problem? Is that most models we use are bipolar, and unfortunately, including cultural models. Now, let me give you a little anecdote. In 1983, in my first day of working with Shell in Rotterdam, the head of group planning of Shell said, Fons, you have to read this article by Charles Hamden Turner. And it's called The Tale of Two Paradigms. And Charles was writing about the difference between East and West and applied it to the energy industry. And very interesting. He said, you should talk to this guy. And I talked to Charles on the phone. He was in London and I was in Amsterdam, or in Rotterdam, in fact, where I work. And Charles said, can you send me a copy of your thesis? Because I just got my PhD at the time, and I sent the thesis to him. And Charles came back to me and said, Fons, I think we can work together, because I reconciled all your dilemmas. I said, what the hell is this guy talking about? He said, yeah, I was afraid you were another Dutchman putting the world on bipolar scales. I said, what the hell? And Charles said, yeah, I see, or I hear you don't really understand. So let me explain. He said, Fons, one of your dimensions is individual versus communitarian. If you are an individualist at the cost of the community, you're an egoist and it doesn't work. If you are a collectivist at the cost of the individual, you're a communist and it doesn't work. So if both ends of your scale don't work, why don't you try to combine them? And I said, wow. And it took me 15 years that I really lived that world. And let me summarize what I was taught by Charles, that any value disconnected from its opposite leads to a pathology. And think about that, yeah? So a value taken to its extreme leads to a pathology. So the opposite of a pathology is health. And health is created by combining opposites. Now, what I'm disappointed about, and I can say that amongst professionals, is that there is hardly any attention in how to deal with opposite, except to adapt to the other side. Most models say, do you now understand the French? Do as the French. The French would hate you for it. Who the hell are you to copy us, right? But reconciliation is another world. And so the problem of our field is that our models are culturally biased, by the way, including mine, don't worry. And secondly, most of our models are bipolar, which leads to stereotypes and, yeah, ask for the need of reconciliation. Now, that's my hopefully enough provocative introduction. And I would like to apply this to the COVID challenges we have. Now, if we don't change our paradigm, we will get organizations that look like this. And you know them, and we're right on our way. This worked very well in the previous crisis, and I think it will work in this crisis as well. Although 2M might become 4M because they are selling a lot of face masks. Now, what is the alternative? The alternative is what Einstein said, that a problem can never be created on the same level it was created. Problems between cultures can only be solved by one level higher. And let me give you 4 levers to pull: innovation, sustainability, globalization, and leadership. Now, globalization leads to the invitation of different viewpoints, of which it's the essential role of a leader to connect. A leader connects opposites, which is another word for innovation that leads to sustainable results. So this all is about how can we create a process in which we combine opposites. By the way, the final point on this, not everything is a dilemma. There are worlds where you have to make a choice, but the choice in a dilemma is very stupid. Now, let me give you the alternative model. Are you a, whatever dimension, a universalist, a rectangle, or a particularist, an ellipse? This is our old paradigm. But if you think that these are the shadows of a cylinder, you suddenly create a new world which includes thesis and antithesis. And the spiral is the symbol of reconciliation. Now, this is, I think, a very simple way of giving you the essence of dilemma reconciliation. Now, look at innovation. Innovation is to combine values that are not easily joined, therefore scarce, therefore profitable. Let me give you 2 examples. What is innovative about Apple? Not only that they sell you charging cables for £35, while I know they're produced in China for about 12 cents. That's very innovative. And really innovative is that we still love them. But if you think about Apple, what apart from the fact that they overcharge so many of their products, what do we lead us to say it's a good company? They have combined, for example, aesthetics with functionality. Normally in a company, there are 2 separate divisions. Every engineer in Apple says, yes, it works. Can we make it beautiful? And every designer in Apple says, yes, it's beautiful. Does it help us to function better? So if you take an iPhone, it's beautiful because it has a glass plate, which is beautiful because it doesn't have an edge, not a frame. And that's why if you swipe it, it doesn't break your nails. In other words, aesthetics contribute to the functionality. That's innovation. Formula One. What is the big dilemma in Formula One? Speed and safety. Now, normally in the car industry, you have 2 separate divisions. One who increases the power of an engine, and one that makes the car safe. And most companies have one thing in common: the 2 divisions don't talk to each other. Every engineer in Formula One says, what can I do with the speed that makes the car more safe? And that is a dilemma reconciled. And aerodynamics is a way of doing it. The faster you go, the more downforce you have. So dilemma reconciliation is joining opposites in such a way that the end result is innovation. And that's why cultural diversity of any kind, because we have now a diversity of diversity, we have nationality, religion, discipline, gender, and it's all culture. But the beauty is that if you have a process of putting these diverse opinions, attitudes, viewpoints together, you get more innovative. And that's why dilemma reconciliation is so important. Now, we have a method to do this. First of all, we help clients to recognize cultural differences. But we stopped with this ages ago. We have an app called Culture for Business, which gives you all the information about cultural differences. But if you stop here, then you run a risk that you only build stereotypes. So we need to respect those differences. One is not better than the other, it's just different. And then once you respect the opposites, you need to reconcile them, and then finally realize and root them. How do you make this work in an organization in a constant factor? Now, we will very soon get to the COVID-19 dilemmas. We have done 6 weeks of research amongst 1,200 people, and we asked for them in indirect ways, what are your major dilemmas? And we have 23, but I'll give you, quote unquote, the top 10. Have a look, and later we'll vote, and not yet, CG, we will vote later on, but just to stimulate your mind. So do we need to comply to safety and health rules, or do we need to be flexible for quick adaptation? If you go for one or you go for the other, you're in trouble. Only reconciliation helps. Do we allow for local experiments like we're doing in Europe, or do we need a centralized global approach? If you do one or the other, you're in deep trouble. You need to combine the two. Individual responsibility, group solidarity, IQ, EQ, deep specialization, interdisciplinary approach. Let's look at the other 5. Digital versus analog. Top-down crisis management or bottom-up, listen to people. Health versus economy. Short-term versus long-term. Inner-directed focus or learning from the environment. Now, are these the 7 dimensions? Yeah, they can easily be put across the 7 dimensions, which we will do in a second. So our research focused on what are people telling us are their dilemmas on 3 levels. The individual, your dilemma. Society, namely, what do I think our nation, our government is doing? And on the organizational level. Now, another point, and I'm repeating myself, the dilemmas are shared across the world. We have done research in Iran, we have done research in Singapore, in Japan, in 6 countries in Europe, 7. Yeah, we have now 120 nationalities that contributed, but sometimes it's only 2 or 3 people. But we'll invite you to use the app, it's for free, and then spread it wherever you like so we can keep on building the database. Now, what we are trying to do is, after we have diagnosed the dilemmas, link it to culture, which I will do, and then help organizations, societies, individuals to reconcile them. Okay, now, again, I don't mind if there are questions in between, but please do it by chatting, and then Alex and Adrian will look at them and warn me, Fons, you're really saying nonsense here. Or it might be a question or a complete protest. I like that as well. It's part of dilemma reconciliation. And you just interrupt me if it's a question worth interrupting, so we can respond to it. So it's a bit more two-way rather than just one way. Yeah. And Alex, can I pause for a moment to see if there are questions or whatever? Comments.
Yes, yeah, good idea. So does anybody have any questions or comments so far? Please put them in the chat if you do.
There was one comment from Andrea Rossi that Daniel Hoffman's core quadrant is also a great tool for remodeling polarities in general.
Yes. No, there are, Barry Johnson, polarity thinking, Daniel Hoffman. There are more people that go beyond the quadrant, because if you just have quadrants, like we have as well, and you stop there, again, you put people in boxes. Yeah. But if you say, hey, these are dilemmas that you need to reconcile, you're in great shape. And then even bipolar models can be useful. And now I'm really surprising people. Even Myers-Briggs can help you. Yeah. Now, why? Because if you go back to the original writings on which Myers-Briggs have based their thoughts, you know that the great quality of people, let me give you an example, is how can you frame your feelings by your thinking, and how can I increase my thinking by linking it to my feelings? Yeah? Well, you get a questionnaire, are you A or are you B? Now, let me defend Myers-Briggs because I love to criticize them. Myers-Briggs are in the world of your preference, right? And I am in the world of clapping. Now, the beauty of clapping is that your preference becomes irrelevant. It is about how do you combine the two. However, with cultural dilemmas, your preference is where you start. So if you are inclined to be more individualistic and you're dealing with a communitarian group, then you need to reconcile because or adapt if you just want to give up your own values. But if you say, no, I like my own values, then you might say, gee, how can I, from an individualistic standpoint, take the cross to the community and vice versa? So it becomes a dance of opposites. So in a nutshell, bipolar models or quadrants, which is a combination of two bipolar models, are useful if then you take the step of, and how can we combine it?
Fons, Vanessa's just put an interesting question in the chat. She says, do you think that in times of crisis, people revert to what they know best in terms of cultural behaviour, i.e. all rationality goes out of the window? She's wondering.
Yeah. Although the exceptional good people, and I will give examples during the rest of my presentation. You know, there is, for example, in the management literature, crisis management allows you to be top down, shut up and go, right? To be honest, yes, with purpose, top down purpose. You know, this is what we are standing for. But if you stop listening, you're in great trouble. And servant leadership is a leadership style that also in crisis management works very well. I'll give you more detailed. So yes, there is an inclination in crisis also on the individual level. And that's what Myers-Briggs says too. You know, in case of stress, you revert back to your preference. Yes, on the other hand, you can teach your preference to be connected to more the dark side of you. And even in crisis, I've seen leaders doing that very consciously and very well. Okay. Now, and again, what I'm saying is we all have preferences. And from that preference, you are allowed to connect it to the opposite. And that is an additional competence that we are not trained for. It looks like we are almost starting with left and right brain to be almost in our DNA to love to make choices rather than to combine. Perhaps the last one, Alex, or
yeah. So Guy or Guy, sorry, excuse me, I don't know which pronunciation you prefer, but says, would yin yang thinking help to reconcile?
Oh yeah. Yin and yang is the Asian manifestation of what we're talking about. And it's in the tension that you create value. Yeah, I'm not Asian at all. Even in my upbringing, I'm a mix of French and Dutch, but it is the essential truth. And the beauty is, if you take one of the pictures of yin and yang, that one is black and the other is white. And if the black would be gray, it looks like the white is less white. It is the contrast that makes your own color even more bright. So it's the opposite that helps you to increase the quality of the opposite. So if you are an individualist meeting a collectivist, then you feel that both feel more shiny about the truth of what they're having. And we'll give you those examples in a second. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's okay, Fons. Please continue. I think we've been through most of the questions. Yeah.
In view of time, what I would like to do now is to go into culture. And obviously we will not do this, I'm insulting you as professionals, but we have defined culture as a dynamic process of solving human problems. In other words, culture is very functional. Values are not coming out of the air. Consensus for the Dutch. We love to involve people because we had to fight water. And very often these problems come to us as dilemmas. And they occur in human relationships, time, and nature, which adds up to the 7-dimensional model, 5 in the area of human relationships, time, and nature. And they are 7 meta-dilemmas if you combine the continua of the opposites. So, and I won't take a lot of time, but I love this one, and I always use it, so I don't want to get off my, it's like Marshall Goldsmith, always having a green shirt. I would like to give you the example of the car accident. Why? Because it's such a clear dilemma. So the 140,000 people we have asked over the last 40 years, the question, you're riding in a car driven by a close friend. Your friend is speeding, going 50 miles an hour, where you're allowed to go 30, and he hits a pedestrian. You come to court and the lawyer of your friend says, you're the only witness. 2 questions. First, what is the right of your friend to expect you to lie for him or her? My friend has a definite right, some right, no right. Now, I've asked many, many, many people over the last 40 years, who would like to be in this situation? And I've never had any participant who raised their hand, nice situation to be in. And then ask why not? And it doesn't matter if you do this in Seoul, Korea, if you do it in Nigeria, if you do it in New York or in London. There is nobody of any culture that doesn't like, that likes the situation to be in. And then you ask why. And the answer in their own words, this is a dilemma. So the dilemma is cultural. There's nobody, including, and correct me if I'm wrong, in this setting, that doesn't want to help friends. And at the same time, there is nobody in this setting that doesn't have something with the truth. That is human. But then we ask for the answer. And that's interesting. Then you get an enormous amount of difference. Now, companies know this, and they say, gee, we have to comply, financial rules, but we don't trust these people in Asia, or worse, the Italians. You know, what we need corporate values. And for me, it's always a sign that the company doesn't have values. That's why you put it on a poster, right? And because if you have values, you don't have to do that. Now, what is number 1 value around the globe? Integrity. May I ask you, if your value is integrity, what does it mean in terms of the right choice? By the way, there is a second question. Would you lie, yes or no? And I was with a big financial institution in America, and they said, Mr. Trompenaars, I don't understand your question. If you have integrity, how can you have a different answer than C? My friend has no right, and I will not help. And by the way, good friends would not lie. That's integrity. There was a Korean in the room who said, John, I disagree. How can you have integrity if you don't help friends? And it's kind of interesting that everybody understands this, right? Now, may I ask you, if your value is integrity and you are in Amsterdam and you have a Korean in the room and an American and a Brit and a French guy, to make it difficult, right? Now, what if they all have their own interpretation of what is integrity? As a company with a strong corporate value called integrity, what would you do? And to be honest, I've asked this now in this network, it's difficult, but I've never heard a person say, oh, that's how you solve it. Why? Because the problem is not your lack of intelligence, the problem is my question. This is a bipolar question, namely that you link a value to one of these answers. Okay, now I have good news for you. The end of dilemma reconciliation is integrity. And if you go to the etymological dictionary, you look up integrity, and it says integrity is creating wholeness through the integration of opposites. Creating wholeness through the integration of opposites. That's dilemma reconciliation. And I learned this in Japan, where they said, Mr. Trompenaars, what we would do in Japan is, first of all, ignore your stupid question. But what we would do is we would test the strength of our friendship by convincing our friend to tell the truth in court himself. So we can talk to the judge to lower the sentence for his courage. So instead of choosing between the friend and going for the truth, which is inclined by the way the question was formulated, you say, no, how can I connect the friend to the truth? And that works in any culture. Have a look, preference. This is called universalism, particularism. We have a universalistic approach. You believe in consistency, there are rules that you need to follow. This enormously interesting invention called transparency. So if in the morning you wake up, you say, honey, you're really ugly without makeup. Yeah, what? Transparency, the new fashion. Are you kidding? You have to become English. You say you have an interesting face and it has potential. The opposite is particularistic. Flexibility, be pragmatic. There are exceptions. It depends. And those people ask, what happened to the pedestrian? Or the best question, the Italian asking, what happened to the car? So you see that these are preferences of societies. Have a look. Now, it's perhaps difficult to read, but let me give you some highlights. Highest in our database is the Swiss. This is, by the way, 140,000 people. 94% of the Swiss say, my friend has no right, or some right combined with, I will not lie. And you see that most Protestants are at the top. Norway, Denmark, Canada, US, Germany. They believe you should tell the truth and friends have no right. And you go at the bottom, Mozambique, Argentina, India, Morocco. Yeah, it's a friend I need to help. Now, this is a dimension I want to introduce for giving it as a dilemma and a way to reconcile. Now, one way it manifests itself is, do you want to go for a standardized approach, the universal truth of headquarters, or do you want to go for the unique treatment of a patient? Now, I've listened carefully to doctors, and doctors said the problem with COVID-19 is that there are different stages, and every patient, you know, are they having symptoms? Are they already giving the infection to somebody else? Are they in the hospital? Are they on the IC? Every patient in every stage needs to be treated differently. And you say, at the other side, we need a standardized approach. Now, what we teach you in dilemma reconciliation is crack the line. Now, if you crack the line and you see on the vertical axis, we need a standardized approach, and then you exaggerate, and we call it an epithet, one size fits all. On the bottom right-hand corner, you have the unaffordable customized medicine. And both don't work. The compromise, be careful, reconciliation is not compromise. It's the untested vaccine. The reconciliation is that you continuously learn from best practices in the different stages of the patient. And that is learning from best practices, as we do in international companies. Another version of this is, do we follow rules or do we adapt quickly to circumstances? Now, this was one of the questions separately, 2 questions, and we asked the 1,200 people in the last 3 weeks to fill in our app. And these are the results. On the bottom, you respond to particular situations and circumstances. And on the vertical axis, you follow standard rules and procedures. And what you see is that Germany, the US, the Netherlands, and China are in the top quadrant of reconciliation. Iran scores low on both. Italy, France, Spain, kind of compromising. The UK, a bit on the edge of compromising. And I don't know yet what the results will be, but I did a quick correlation on what the World Health Organization said about lowering the curve. And I can tell you, there is a 0.35 correlation on the individual level, not on the country level yet, because we need more countries, that shows that those who reconcile are doing better than those who don't. Okay? So reconciliation, as we have found in many other ones, are apparently correlating with the success of your intervention. The other one is individual versus communitarian. I will be quick in explaining. A very interesting one is, do you want to fulfill your individual needs, like individual freedom, or do you want to follow group guidelines? Have a look at the subtitles. Now, what I'm proud of in the Netherlands, and I think will happen in Sweden, let me say, I hope, that we give people individual responsibility, which includes the respect for each other, and that amongst each other, we sustain the individual points of departure, like social distancing, and the picture shows it. By the way, David Lewis made them in the UK, so especially the English people will recognize the beautiful picture on the top right-hand corner. I think if you would only go for group guidelines without individual freedom, you run a risk. If you only go for individual freedom and ignoring the group guidelines, you run a risk. But if both are connected, you're doing a great job. Have a look at the 2 questions we asked. Achieve individual accountability. Collaborate with as many people as possible for group immunity. Switzerland, the Netherlands, Germany, doing pretty well. The US is lopsided to the bottom, namely, what can I say? Have a look at Italy, Spain, Iran, not reconciling, scoring low on both. And again, who knows how this will end, but my gut feel says reconciliation is better than going for one or the other, or compromise. Neutral versus affective, it's about emotions. So I will skip this one, but there are more neutral cultures, the more affective cultures. Have a look at the reconciliation. Now, this was one where in the Netherlands, we said in the very beginning on the scientific insights, which we call neutral, which is rational. Let's open the schools because these are young people that will not infect each other. And the consequences are pretty low, but it will help to develop group immunity. Then you got the popular vote, the union of teachers, the parents of children. So there was a group revolt. No, we can't keep the schools open. I'm talking about mid-March. What are what we call epithets? You are right, but you don't get it. That's science. popular vote, you are wrong, but you get it. What is the reconciliation, which is happening now? Step by step, you take little actions. So you start with the primary school, then you go to the secondary school, etc., etc. Now, my favorite and the last one, we're doing fine in timing, yeah, more or less. Specific versus diffuse. A specific culture is focused, is what Kurt Lewin calls the peach. The peach, namely, has a small privacy, the nut in the center, and a lot of accessible flesh, versus the coconut, very difficult to access, but once you're in, it's very soft. Now, this is one of the pictures in Berlin. Have a look at specific and diffuse. And let me explain what that means. So when the specific culture meets the diffuse culture, what is the difference in approach? Now, we have claimed that the economy is specific. The extreme of capitalism in the mind of Trump is shareholder value, the value of people who never share. And then we have stakeholder value, which is including everything. So the dilemma is you go for health only, diffuse, which is the risk of Asia now, is that you have a complete lockdown, health is great, but you go bankrupt. If you go in the American way, and you know, with Easter we open up everything for the economy, shareholder value, but you destroy health. Now, an intelligent lockdown is, can you be on the edges of freedom, which allows the economy to continue, perhaps not top, but at least reasonable, without putting the health in too much danger. And I love the following example, and it's all about questioning. How can we use the economy to increase health? And how can we go for health and increase the quality of your economy? Let me give you one example. Our Dutch company, G-Star, is in fashion. They lost 30% of their income because the shops were closed, no more fashion. They developed a face mask for $65 that looks beautiful. They printed 100,000. This was marketed, advertised in the Netherlands, but worldwide on Friday morning. Friday afternoon, they were sold out. 100,000 times $65 is connecting. You do something which is good for health and you make money out of it. And by the way, I'm not talking about corrupt face masks. This has been tested and it's really good for health, and it's not making money on the cost of health. So there are ways, but it's asking the right question. In your business, what can I do that helps health and can increase our income? Think about your own business, which, at least in mine, has been suffering heavily. Now, this is what we asked, and it's another dilemma within specific and diffuse. Do you go deep for the medical science, or do you go broad in having different disciplines, having a dialogue? Now, you see that here the top three that are pretty doing well is they have combined depth with breadth. Because the risk, if you only listen to medical people, which is specific and deep, you run the risk that you don't take a lot of attention to economists. If you only look to economists, no, we need the dialogue between the two. And apparently, Germany and Switzerland have done that excellently. Immediately, the scientific institutes got together to discuss this. In the Netherlands, they did this by sequencing. They first went to medical stuff, and now they involve everybody. So this is a running scale, and I hope America and the UK will come. By the way, the UK very much went into one discipline, but there was not a lot of dialogue between the disciplines, as your own people tell me. I would like to stop here. We have more, but in view of time, I would stop with what is a good leadership style in the crisis. And I'll skip this one, but it's, do you go for output with the risk, bottom up, lost democratic leadership, too much consensus, too much dialogue? Or do you go top down, follow the leader, it's a crisis, and you all drop down the cliff because nobody is listening? Servant leadership is the way to go. Now, a servant leader is not a weak person. They hold the ladder for others to climb. It's the captain on the ship that, not like happened in Italy, goes off first, goes off last, because they hold the ladder for others to climb. Now, a great example is the CEO in America that said we have to fire 100 out of our 400 staff because if we don't, we're bankrupt. Unless, and I want to listen to you today, you have a better idea. Within a day, they had a Zoom call amongst all 400 employees. They decided that the top 10% would go down 30% in their salary, so that the very bottom didn't have to change anything about their salary. And the middle, it was like a scale of 5%. They fired at the end nobody, because everybody agreed on decreasing their salary except the bottom. And the CEO said in an interview, I've never seen so motivated people. Now that's a sign of servant leadership. Be very clear what you will do if they don't come with a good solution, and then listen to the solution and act on that. So a servant leader enables others to perform better, and it's a leadership style that will work across cultures, bottom up combined with top down, and will work in a crisis. I would like to leave it here and see if there are any questions, and then go into some voting in what dilemma you would like to work on.
Yes, so if you've got any questions for Fons at this stage, please pop them in the chat. Federica has mentioned, she said polarization, or the either or organization of options, is a bi-dimensional reduction of reality. I'm thinking, in fact, about the ecological model of concentric circles by Bronfenbrenner instead, which also suggests a different geometric shape and implies a fluid movement among layers of relations and explanations. And Andra has commented, agree, Federica, systems dynamics are more circular than linear and two-dimensional.
Very, very good, and I admire their typing capability. But it's very true. I think there are models that try to get away of now make a choice. However, if you are going for preference, and you're very clear about preference in your question, then it's okay if after that you take it as an intermediate step in, say, from your preference, what do you do to reconcile it? And we have tried different ideas in how can you capture it without making it too complex? Or if you would give people a dual axis and say, where are you on the axis? You know, you give away the ideal situation, and people will go for the top right-hand corner. While if you scramble the axes and you say, where do you score? They don't know what is behind it. And you get better results, in our opinion. So I'm not against bipolarity as long as it's an intermediate step in what you do thereafter. And then, if I may react, because it's also kind of an implicit introduction into dilemma thinking. A lot of people say, oh, but you're saying it's not either or, it's and. No, and is not good enough. Let me give you an example. We had a Dutch company, Philips. They made consumer electronics. They're now more in health. But they had the best products in the world. They have still now the most of the patents in the world. and Sony was selling it for them because they were not good in marketing. So they bought Italian designers. So they had and great high tech, and they had great marketing and sales, but the two groups never talked to each other. So what I would plea is that dilemma reconciliation is not and, it's through. So the essence of dilemma reconciliation is how can I, through value X, get more of value Y, rather than have both without a communication between the two. And that's why our symbol is a spiral. It's a bit like skating. You can go left and right, which makes you advance. Well, if you go parallel, you don't advance. Okay. Now that's a long answer to a long question. Perhaps the last one, so I can perhaps leave some of the questions to the very end.
That's it, Fons. Actually, there's no more questions at the minute. So,
Okay.
yeah, please continue.
Good. Then I'll, by the way, nice little picture. The servant leader can be at the bottom, at the top. By the way, for those who don't know what a servant leader is, look around. A good father and a good mother is always a servant leader. And Greenleaf defined it as those who enable others to perform better. And by the way, the icons in religion are all servant leaders. Now, dilemma-based thinking. Is it thinking? Is it gut feel? Let's see. Now, what I would like to do is give you, first of all, the etymological root of the word dilemma. It just in Greek means two propositions in conflict. We have added the word apparent because it gives people hope, namely that you can combine it. An irreconcilable dilemma, we call a paradox. Now, there are people who argue it's the opposite. The root, it's brother and sister. But we have chosen for dilemma because it's really close to it, die being two, lemma being proposition. It's really two propositions, by the way, that either you both want or you both don't want. A dilemma is not a positive versus a negative. It's either two positives or two negatives. Have a look. Is it good to centralize? Yeah, for certain things. Is it good to decentralize? Yes, for certain things. And what we do is crack what we call crack the line, which is step number 2, to open a culture space. So that in step 5, and there are some intermediate steps, which I will explain, you reconcile. So if you take your human body, is your human body centralized or decentralized? Now, if you centralize everything, you can't sleep anymore because everything goes through your brain and it's centralized, it doesn't work. If you decentralize everything and they cut off a leg and you don't notice it because it's all decentralized, it doesn't work. We have centralized the knowledge of an ever more decentralized activity. So all the models of cultural measurement, are you centralized or are you decentralized, can be quite nonsensical. I'm not saying that there are not completely centralized organizations and completely decentralized organizations, but the best organizations score high on both. For example, as Jim Collins have shown, they are centralized around purpose and values and decentralized around behaviors. Now, are they centralized or decentralized? It's a stupid question. They combine the two, that's why they're successful. Now, if we do it according to 6 steps, you have a bigger chance that you become a virtuous circle. If you don't, you eat each other alive. Now, I would like to do, again, have a look at the 10 that I showed, that you vote for which one you would like to go, and then Seji will set up a voting page where you can use your screen to vote, and then we'll see who has done best in terms of majority. So the second one is this, and may I, Seji, ask you to get up to the voting screen, and you have another little time to look at the 10 in a row, and please just click the one you want to work on.
It's quite interesting seeing the voting coming through, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, well done,
Yeah.
CJ.
Like the Grand National.
Yeah,
Yes.
Who's going to fall at the last fence?
Yes.
I think. Oh, I can't quite see the bottom of the screen. Hang on, I'm going to move mine
I
on.
think health economy.
Yeah, I was just about to say health
Nothing
versus
ahead.
economy is in the lead at the minute.
Yeah.
And compliance to safety versus
Individual responsibility and group solidarity are
Yeah.
a good second.
This is my 5th webinar, and health and economy has won every time. So it's perhaps the meta dilemma. And by the way, perhaps one little thing to think about, dilemmas are related, because perhaps one of the solutions of the health economy reconciliation is that you go for compliance and flexibility. You see what I'm saying? So there is a hierarchy of dilemmas, and a good leader will always choose the one that makes the most effect on the others, right? Now, we have chosen health versus economy. Thank you, Seji, very helpful. Let's go to the next explanation, and can we, or shall I, can you take away this, or can I take away the screen? Yes?
You can close that.
Good, thank you so much. Now, we would like you to, let me see if I can make this, because it seems like mine has now stopped. Yeah, here we go. We have done step number 1, okay? Let's go through the other steps. There are 6, so 5 more to go. By the way, US consultants and US trainers and US professionals, what we very often do to get the dilemma is we do the voting before the workshop, being it digital or being it face-to-face. We have a web queue, and the web queue is an instrument where you gather the dilemmas of the client. I'll tell you a bit more about that in a second. The second step is chart the dilemma, and that is cracking the line and make it specific to the table, to the subgroup. In other words, health versus economy. Yeah, what health? What economy? Are you talking about your organization and profitability? Are you talking about society? So have a discussion about what level, and make it as specific as possible in your group. Then stretch the dilemma. What are the pluses and minuses of both axes? Then epithets, which are the summary of the extremes, like my little cartoons, 110, 10, 1, and 5, 5, the compromise. And they need to be cynical, negative, because, or an expression that you say, my way or the highway, or shareholder value, the value created for people to share, you know, cynical, because you don't want to go there. You want to invite people for 10-10, which is step number 5. And how can I get more of value X through the use of value Y, and vice versa? And finally, what is the action plan that we need to work out to make this happen? Now, this is the 6 steps. What I would like to do is invite you step by step. Now, we have done, and here is what we call the template. So what is the dilemma? And here I would say, let's invite yourself to use the tools that are available. It can be done by interviewing. By the way, if you interview people about their dilemmas, don't be Dutch and say, what is your dilemma? People are very nervous when you talk about dilemmas. They say, I'm a real man, I don't have dilemmas. Now then you know they're overpaid. Because the essential role of a leader is, yes, there are dilemmas, and I better help you. The risky leaders like Trump, they don't see any dilemma. You just go for one go and you see the results, because 2 days later, he says the opposite. Now, what I would like to do is get you in an exercise in charting the dilemma. Now, in a second, Seji will put you into groups. You only get 5 minutes.
Mhm.
And you draw the dual axis on a piece of paper or in your mind, of which the vertical one is health, and the horizontal one is economy, okay? I want every group, and I think, Seji, it's 5 people.
Yes.
You will be at randomly put into a team, have a discussion about 1 plus about health, 1 negative about health, 1 plus about the economy, if you go for the economy, and 1 negative if you go for the economy, okay? Now, normally what we do in workshops is we ask the team to talk about 3 of each, but now we have so many people and we only have 5 minutes. So I invite you to discuss 1 plus and 1 minus for each of the axes, being health and economy. And please type the results with a little plus in front and then your statement, and a little minus in front with a little statement. And don't worry if it's health or economy, we'll find out by what you're saying. Good luck. And I'll see you back in 5 minutes. And Seji,
Fons, sorry, can I just double check on point A? You said appoint a dilemma holder. Do you want the group to do that or be more generalistic? So if you have a dilemma holder, then somebody owns the problem, don't they?
right.
So, yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yes.
Also, there is a bit. We are on 2 levels. There is teaching you what is dilemma reconciliation, and here I hope that most of us recognize this dilemma as at least a country national thing, a government.
I think you're right. I think we're all the dilemma holder in this instance.
I guess so. I guess so. But that's not the case if you are having a dilemma reconciliation going on where one is more about health and the other. So if you have a European committee in Brussels getting together, I'm sure that some feel more like health and others feel more, and others don't even think it's a dilemma. So that's why we put it there. But I think in this case, we are all dilemma holders.
I mean, one just to illustrate the point, one practical example I was thinking of is that I've got a very good friend who owns a shop in the high street here in Malmesbury, where I live. And she's absolutely the dilemma holder of this particular dilemma, because, you know, she needs to open her shop to earn money, but at the same time she doesn't want to open her shop, you know, because she wants to stay safe and stay healthy, and also protect her customers, that she would prefer stayed healthy and safe. So, you know, if we were working in a group to help her, for example, then in this particular example she would be our dilemma holder, wouldn't she? And she'd be
very good, Alex. I'm so proud you picked this up so well.
Oh, I was trained by somebody, I can't remember. Yeah.
No, you're quite right. And the second point B, the more specific your dilemma, the easier later on you can develop action plans. Because let's say if it's global versus local, it becomes almost philosophy. But if you say no, it's our performance system that is standardized globally, or do we adapt it to the local cultures, then it becomes much more clear what the real dilemma is. So be as specific as possible, like the shop in the street, etc. Yeah. So 5 minutes to do that.
Okay.
I don't know if the slides go with you.
Slides won't go with you.
Okay, but at least a plus and a minus on both of the axes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And please, just to remind you, please nominate somebody in your group that will come back and put the notes in the chat box. That would be great. Okay, we'll see you on the other side. Welcome back. What we'd like you to do, please, is to put your thoughts into the chat box, and what we're planning to do, because there's 8 groups of you, so for this particular feedback, why don't just groups 1 to 4 put the summary of your thoughts into the chat box, and then when we break the second time, we'll ask for groups 5 to 8 to feedback. It's just a bit more efficient on time that way, if you don't mind. So groups 1 to 4, could you kindly put your thoughts into the chat, and I will feed them to Fons. So just
So
give you
a plus on health, a minus on health, a plus on economy, a minus on economy.
exactly.
Yeah. Alex, I don't think they would know which group they are in, the numbers.
Oh, I see. Apologies. I'm really sorry. I assumed the groups would be labelled, in which case ignore that instruction entirely, and just anybody from one person from each group, then just dive in, oh, you do know that.
Oh, good.
Marvellous. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so we've got some things coming through. So yeah, if you know your group and you know you're in group 1 and 4, please pop your thoughts in here. Okay, so group 1, I need to catch them before they all disappear. Hang on. So group 1 has said positive for health saves lives, and shows solidarity to all, which emphasizes humanity. Okay. All right, so we've got saving lives and then showing solidarity. And from another group, we've got the dilemma was between children's education or work.
That's nice, very specific.
Yeah. Group 3 have said, yeah, health, a plus for health is to saving lives. And I'm just trying to translate what's been said there. So group 3, a plus is for saving lives. I think they mean a minus is mental health. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's a good example of a minus of the lockdown, isn't it? Mental health. And other problems further down the line if jobs are lost. Yes. So if we prioritize health, then we save lives, but our mental health can go down, and then further health problems down the line. So group 1 have given us a negative for health. So prioritize physical health with one condition at the expense of mental health and other conditions. So yeah, a similar point, but also mentioning other conditions. I know in the UK, I expect it's similar elsewhere, you know, things like cancer treatments have had to go on hold.
Right.
Yeah.
Alex, on the economies, a positive and a negative.
Okay, so economy, group 3 have said we've saved jobs, and another positive for the economy is in fact this is almost a reconciliation. Good economy equates with positive health.
Yeah.
And then I'm reading Vanessa's point here.
Or perhaps Alex, in the previous one,
yeah,
if you focused on mental health,
yes,
but not physical health, then it might be really like the plus for the economy side.
Yes, that's true. Because if people go back to work, then they're feeling more productive. Their mental health probably improves. Yeah. Are there any more positives for the economy, folks? And would you like to put anything more in there, or any more negatives for the economy? Or have we said it all? Hang on a minute.
We've got...
Okay, Vanessa's being very specific here, and I've just realised what she's saying. Sorry, so forgive me, Vanessa. It took me a while to digest what you were saying. So Vanessa's suggesting massages. You know, people who are working from home need massages because they're working at home so much.
Yeah, now we are already in reconciliation here.
Yeah, we are, aren't we? It's like, oh, just go to the last step, everybody. That's brilliant.
Alex, in view
yeah.
of time, I think it's time to reconcile. Let me tell you where we are.
Yeah.
We have done 1, 2, and 3 now. 2 was about make the dilemma more specific. Number 3 was really try to get in stretching the dilemma. Why do we do this? And then we go in reconciliation, skipping epithets. We are doing this because very often the different sides from a dilemma, let's take headquarters is at the table with operating companies. Headquarters said we need to standardize everything, and operating, oh, you don't understand. So with stretching, you get pluses and minuses, and you get a balanced view of each participant. And you take away the power by a system. That's why we do this. Also, because the summary of the negatives can be put in the epithets. And in the epithets, we see that we have negatives united. And later on with dilemma reconciliation, and the epithets, by the way, in our grid are the following. If it still works. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. So stretching, pluses and minuses. Epithets is the extremes in terms of these 3. The diagonal. Why negative? Because you don't want to be there. That's our old way of thinking. And then you come to the question, what can X do to help Y? And what can Y do to help X? And that is the reconciliation essence. So I would like to give you perhaps 7 minutes asking that question. So what with the economy could we do so that we become more healthy, but I would say beyond mental health? And what can we do with taking health very seriously that helps us to beef up the economy? Because what I see now, the dialogue is not there, and you have groups saying we should go for the economy. Bolsonaro as the best example in Brazil, and now lots of people are dying. And I know societies where it's only health, and they might be having a big economic problem. So please try to have a discussion in your teams about brilliant insights how to combine the 2.
Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. So like last time, please put your feedback on what your reconciliations were, pop them into the chat, please. And whilst you do that, I just wanted to highlight Group 8's contribution from last time, which I'm sorry I didn't have time to pick up your feedback on that, but I read your feedback about essentially what you were creating there were your 2 epithets, but I thought it was quite amusing that both your epithets were in fact the same phrase, which was we're all dead. So unusually there you've got 2 epithets on the opposite axis, but in fact your epithets are exactly the same, which was which was a first from my experience.
Yeah. And then Alex, the compromise is an open door. We only are killed half of us. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And no, that's beautiful, because that's really the compromise.
Okay. Right. There's some coming through now, so I need to read them quickly before I lose them off the screen. So Group 1 have said support tourism in a health positive way, invest in ways we can make tourism healthy, invest in sustainable energy and transport, which will encourage healthy activity. Oh my goodness, and now I've lost it. So I think yes, I can read it if I put my if I can make it full screen. Okay. Right.
Alex, take your time. May I react?
Yeah. Yes, please do. Yeah, and then you react, and then I'll read the next one in a sec.
Wonderful examples. Even in practice, there is now a low budget. It's more than EasyJet, but they do planes and hotels. And they now say, we will test you with the best test material we have if you come on board. We will test you when you arrive. You are in an all-inclusive hotel where you have to stay and nobody can get in. We have tested the personnel and they were sold out. It's, by the way, called Corendon, if you want to look it up. In the beginning, there was a lot of, yeah, but are the tests good enough and what have you? So there are already companies doing this with great success. And I think it's a wonderful example because especially if you're the first, you get a lot of people who want to go on vacation, which is great for the economy. And you still, and by the way, there are, the hotels were selected if they had a fitness one, and a diet one, because they know one of the highest correlation is your weight and being sensitive.
And to build on those points, a couple of other groups have said, you know, go for the greener economy because that protects health anyway. More flexible working, more mobile working, create more jobs in the greener economy will create a cleaner environment for people to live in. One group looks like they very specifically looked at my friend's high street shop, so thank you for doing that. I'll have to give the feedback to her. And they've said offer online shopping, offer personal shopping with delivery, and let customers pre-book slots to visit the shop. I love that last idea. I'm going to let her know that one because I think that would suit her very much. So mobile working is also, you know, a reconciliation, allowing people to work from home more to achieve work-life balance. Another group have said reevaluate the way we work within the border system, so have that balance between health, economy and environment, and only travel when necessary. And do you know what, I think we have all learnt that, you know, I think everybody's reflecting, aren't they, now on the fact that we don't actually really need to travel nearly as much as we did. And group 10 are also echoing the what can health do for economy. We need to avoid the second peak, and people need to be able to focus better and get fit for work. Yeah. Do you want me to continue? We've got a few more.
What I suggest, Alex, in view of time, and I want to be a bit respectful for time, is that we type this out. I know it's, if you record, you Seji, that I'm not saying nonsense. We can type out all the results, including the pluses and minuses and what have you, so that we share it in another way. Because the goal of this session was the following. Namely, we as human beings tend to have similar dilemmas, that we are trying to reconcile them for innovative end results, or we use innovation to reconcile them. And we did an exercise to get you through some of the movements of dilemma reconciliation that you can use at home. Now, Alex and I will later on give a train the trainer of half a day and another half a day, so 2 half days, where we really go into things like, there are different ways to reconcile a dilemma. Have a look at the screen. Processing means you add ing to the axis, developing health rather than health. Sequencing, it's a bit like skating. You first go for the other within the back of your mind that you need to go to the opposite. That's sequencing. Contextualizing, what is text and what is context? So for example, in branding, is your name the local brand and, by the way, part of Unilever? Or the opposite, that you have the global brand, oh, by the way, this is this product. So you, Ford is always the first name, focus. While Opel is a sub-brand of General Motors. So Opel comes first within the context of General Motors. With Ford, it's the opposite. Now, again, we'll go into much more detail, but what we did here is synergizing. And I'm amazed in 7 minutes how you came out with wonderful ideas. And that gives me a lot of pleasure. Now, a final point is the action points. And the action points and how to implement, how to measure, and those kind of things. You don't have to do it here because it's a governmental thing on this level of dilemma. what I would like to say is the templates will be given to you. Thank you. And may I ask also later on to think about filling in this little app. Why? It's for free and we love the database. Now, I thought I put it on the last slide, but I don't, but it's thtconsulting.com /COVID-19. So it's our website at thtconsulting.com /COVID-19, the letters 19. And it takes 5 minutes, but it gives a wealth of input, and give it to your neighbor, give it to a lot of people that would like to fill it in.
Yes, Fons, we actually sent it out before the
wonderful
before this, but we'll send it out again when we give the link to the video and when we send the slides and so
wonderful.
On.
And Adrian, what we will do is we will work out the British, let's say most of you are from the UK, but I don't know, but at least the results of what we measured for this group.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see if there's any consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I can see some, you know, there's quite a lot of people that need to go now. So, Fons, thank you so much. I was delighted, as you were, to see that everybody was able to work through that so quickly and to get the point and to present those reconciliations within just a few minutes. So it's really encouraging. So thank you, everybody. Adrian, do you want to just close this out?
Thank you very much to Fons for stepping in when faced with this very large crowd that Alex was going to have to deal with. And thank you everyone for coming, and those who've stayed to the end. We're 15 minutes over time, but given the amount of work that everyone did and the amount of stuff we got through, that's pretty good. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you again, Fons, and let's fingers crossed that our politicians take the right decisions, and maybe they were listening in.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Adrian and Alex, wonderful to work with you, and Seiji, thank you for all the support, and Chris. Really wonderful, and Alex, we will also in a mailing announce a trainer together. A delight to work with you, and thanks for all the help. It was a pleasure to be with my finally professional brothers and sisters.
Yeah, thank you, Fons. Thanks very much, and we'll see you all again very soon, I hope.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.